Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me today. We got military drill exposes war crime incident. Angry cops react. And if you're not subscribed already, please do so. It really helps out the channel and I would appreciate it a ton, along with smashing that like button while you're down there. And then going over to Angry Cops' video, that'll be in the description below. And you can do both over there too. He would appreciate it, and it's respectful for all involved. And without any further ado, let's get into it.
War crime, war crime, war crime! Everybody's screaming war crime. It's the new hot word of 2025. But why is the term war crime trending on everything? Well, I'll tell you. Well, it all starts off with Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, getting in a little bit of hot water because of a drug boat that we missile striked. Missile stroked? Missile struck? Someone strike with a missile. Struck with a missile. Gosh dang it, English is hard. And that boat wasn't autonomous. Yes, it had drugs and maybe other things on there, but there was also two dudes on it. Two drug trafficking dudes. And some people are calling the strike on that drug ship a war crime. Now, is this a real war crime or is this...
Now, a war crime really actually would require us to be, at war with a armed force in military uniforms. That's one thing that determines war crime versus just people doing fucked up shit to each other.
Some stunt for people to get political points against the Trump administration.
Otherwise, there were a ton of war crimes that are constantly going on in the Middle East.
Well, stick around and I'll tell you. But first, a word from this video's sponsor. Fume!
A word from...
Or scan the code to get yours today. Okay,
let's... Fume is inhaling... essential oils, basically. It's unknown what it'll do to you long term. I wouldn't do it. I'd say your best way of, quitting your other habit is just stop buying it. Imagine the amount of money you'll save by not buying your habit, like if it's a vape, if it's cigarettes, whatever, instead of just swapping your habit for the fume thing, and now you're inhaling essential oils, which, like I said, we don't know the long-term effects of. We know the long-term effects of cigarettes. It's usually cancer.
Start off with a little bit of backstory so we understand how we got to missiles getting sent at drug boats, okay? It starts off with two players, all right? Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, and Tren de Agua, who I constantly call Tren de Agua because I'm a gringo. Now, I'm sure the first thing that you're thinking...
Oh, I thought he called him Tren de Agua because they always wound up at the bottom of the water.
Is, I bet you this cartel gives a whole bunch of money to the president of Venezuela. And I'm sure that there is some of that there. But the relationship between the two is actually flipped. Maduro actually funds Tren de Agua. I'm just going to say Agua, or Agua. Because Maduro funds them, allows them to cross borders, has them kill people across borders for him, and also has conducted political murders inside Venezuela against his opposition using Tren de Agua.
Wow, that totally doesn't sound like another country on our border called Mexico and their president. Oh wait, yeah, it totally does sound exactly like that.
Tren de Agua. So is Tren de Agua a gang? Yes. Could it also loosely be kind of a Gestapo? Like a state-run and organized, funded secret police? Yes.
And if people wanted to know what a modern-day Gestapo looks like. Prime example.
Now, I'm sure you heard a lot about the Tren de Agua gangs going through, I think it was Colorado, and I think in Texas as well, overrunning apartment complexes, moving drugs, shooting people, violence, etc. All the stuff that goes with violent gangs. And I'm sure you heard all about that during the election. Trump was hitting on it a lot.
This gang is terrorizing law-abiding citizens, including taking over multiple apartment complexes. You have to take a look at this.
Violent gang coming into the United States, moving drugs, creating a lot of violence. We need to...
And basically setting up a little base as that apartment complexes, or several of them. They're literally having outpost-style bases right here on our soil. And people think there's a problem with us striking their boats, bringing their people and drugs here.
respond to this, which I think everybody can say, regardless of political leaning, yes, violent gangs coming up from the southern border and overrunning people in apartment complexes is not a good thing. So the Trump administration's response is to now label them a terrorist organization, Tren de Aragua, terrorist organization, which if we learned anything from the Obama administration, means you get to do some extracurricular activities to them.
We need to call in a drone strike.
Drone strike!
Hey!
And that's exactly what happened. On September 2nd, the first of several drone strikes, or I'll just say missile strikes, because some of them could be other aircraft, on fast-moving drug speedboats and semi-submersibles coming from Venezuela with.
And some of them probably aren't even aircraft firing these. They're probably being fired from some of the ships we have out there. Remember, Venezuela? Don't touch the boats!
Foreign intelligence stating that they were Tren de Aragua and headed for the United States were intercepted and struck by U.S. munitions. Yay! Yeah! So on September 2nd, it literally pops off with the first strike. And most people are okay with that. Finally, the war on drugs being taken seriously by treating it like a real war. This is what happens when you poison our streets, kill our kids, and put our families and loved ones into crossfire.
Because, yeah, they're bringing in these drugs, which, yeah, you can say, you can be on the side of, oh, well, just don't do drugs and everything will be okay, right? It's true. However, there are some people who will choose to do a certain drug. For example, let's say someone wanted to go do a little of that white nose candy and get some cocaine, and all of a sudden it was cut with fentanyl in a bad way, and now all of a sudden that guy who just wanted to get a little wakey booger sugar and get his chores done for the evening in a matter of about 50% of the time, now he's fucking dead on the floor, and his buddy has to come home and call an ambulance, call paramedics and everything, confirm that he's dead, realize, oh shit, now I gotta go through a whole bunch of other work, moving him out, and this whole thing could have been avoided if the cartels just hadn't sent that fentanyl in here, hadn't sent the cocaine in here. He wouldn't have been wanting to try either of them. He didn't know we had one of them.
Things couldn't be that simple, could it? We couldn't just kill the bad guys that are intentionally killing people in our nation and undermining its security so that they can sell a bunch of dope and get more gun money and drug money and build their criminal enterprise bigger and bigger and bigger until we're like Mexico. Everybody knows guns and drugs go together. It's just science.
For real. And there's also a small group of our U.S. population, not many of you, but enough of you for me to say it. If you think the United States military will have trouble fighting the cartel, no, they won't have trouble fighting the cartel. The thing that you know, tugs down at the U.S. military the hardest is actually having to abide by rules of engagement in certain contexts. However, if they're a terrorist group, they're in civilian clothing, that turns them into an insurgent group that allows a different rule set to be followed. Instead of going for, combatants in military uniform like the country is supposed to do according to the Geneva Convention, I say where you violate that in one country, the country you're fighting, I think they should be able to violate it in ways too. Tit for tat rule violations. If, you did a war crime here, we get to do one over here. Oh, ours was worse than yours? Well, maybe you shouldn't have done yours first.
It's like lamb and tuna fish. About a week ago, it all came back to a head because somebody looked at the video footage of the first boat getting smacked with a whole bunch of freedom on September 2nd. And I don't know who the first person to interpret this video was in this manner, but their point of view has been echoed by every talking head on the news, whose goal with every time they get the spotlight is to just bash on the administration.
No, they're not bashing on the administration, they're bashing on Trump. And in turn, it bashes through the administration in like a downward bashing. There's a lot of bashing going on. But yeah, no, they have just such a hate for Trump that they're like, no, we can't let him do anything. Oh, he wants to exhale carbon dioxide. No, force him to exhale like fucking THC. I want to go breathe in the fumes and everything around him. No, you don't, people. Fuck off and shut the fuck up. Sit down and realize the country is actually improving.
To where I just shut them out. You ever see
Overall.
politicians like that? It's every time something comes out, they just go, "You see that? It's because of the other guy." And then
Yeah,
it's on both sides.
all three
It's
of
on both
those.
sides, and it's mind-numbing. Because this person's interpretation of the video was there was a first strike on the ship, which stopped it. Ship caught on fire, didn't go down. The two people that were on the ship bailed and then came back onto the ship, and then there was a second strike on the ship. And in their opinion, the people on the boat posed no threat. This entire incident is a war crime.
I mean, I think if I were the guys on the boat, to be honest, I'd rather be blown the fuck up immediately rather than drowned. I would rather have my life just click, lights out, rather than dead, drowned. Because you're trying to stay afloat and you
That's where
can't.
we're at right
Especially
now.
because the
Guys
water
on the
is
ship moving drugs.
got drugs and
Good
fire all
target,
over
hit
it.
Missile strike doesn't sink the ship. Guys get back on the ship that were blown off of it or jumped off of it when it was struck. Second strike happens. Boom! Everything's gone now. No more problem. And that's where everybody's upset. Now I'm sure you're
Just like how you would a zombie. Double tap it. Every time. Sometimes that'll save your life.
wondering, AC, is it a war crime? Is it not?
No.
Allow me to educate you on a little bit of history and a little bit of common practice of the United States military when it comes to combat, combatants, and engaging a target. Now, to make things a little more easier, so we've got a good flow of our thoughts right here, right? I'm going to bring up a reason why somebody would say that this is a war crime. And then I'm going to juxtapose it or compare it to a real-life combat scenario. And then you can determine whether or not that still qualifies in your mind as a war crime or
It doesn't.
as a justifiable use of force in a conflict. Isn't this fun? Let's learn.
It's real fun. The first. Bam.
The first strike. A lot of people are saying that after the first strike, those people no longer were a threat. Or that after the first strike, that's all that you get. You cannot continue to engage an enemy or target after that first strike, unless that target continues to show or provide a threat. Well, I kind of already talked about this on Twitter, because if you look at this video here, now I've edited out the guts and gore from this combat footage here. You can see all of it on Pepperbox.
Oh boy.
Now there's one volley, one strike, which connects with the target. Wow, super cool. And then you'll see that it is immediately followed up with a secondary volley or secondary strike.
To be honest, that secondary strike, if I had survived the first, and I'm the literal only one around, and I'm going to bleed out in a very painful way, yeah, I probably want that second strike to end me immediately. No questions about it. I don't want to be crawling across the battlefield like a zombie crawler in Call of Duty because I got my legs blown off and maybe I am short a few fingers and my face is half gone and I'm just like, I can't get here.
So if we use the
So no, not a war
strike
crime.
rule, meaning you only get one strike per target, well then, every helicopter pilot in Iraq and Afghanistan is going to have to be brought up on war crimes. And because so many
And
of
don't
those
even mention
silly
the Vietnam
things on
pilots.
the internet, well, you are going to have a busy trial schedule. And I use this video from aircraft firing on combatants to prove a point. People will say, well, there's no threat. There's no threat to other people. The targets in this video were combatants, okay? So therefore, you can engage them. Now, I don't have to be a soldier with a firearm standing face to face with a guy in an immediate threat for that aircraft to engage an enemy force. Because that enemy force in and of itself is a legitimate target.
Because, hey, if you want to take that into context, if something has to be a threat before you can actually go attack it, technically the U.S. should have never touched and gone and attacked Nazi Germany at all. If once Pearl Harbor was attacked, we should have gone right after the Japanese, immediately finished them off and gone back to our home and been like, Europe, you finished with Hitler yet? No? Okay, we'll hang out over here till you're done. And that would have been it. Like, come on. No. The United States chose to go fight someone who they deemed a threat. The people on the boat. They happen to have been alive, got back up on the boat, and who knows if the boat was disabled or still operational. If it was still operational, yes, those guys are a threat, especially if they've got, some any amount of fentanyl. That will kill people in the U.S. That will end lives, ruin families. I don't think they should be allowed to just bring that shit in here.
Tren de Aragua gang members, legitimate targets in international waters while on boats, transporting, moving, engaging in their criminal enterprise, which we deemed a part of their terrorist organization? I say yes. You're engaging in the activity to further a terrorist organization. Valid target. Let's continue with the poses a threat narrative. You see all these videos? Drones, Ukraine, Russia, dropping ordnance or intentionally ramming the drone laden with explosives into individuals. If you've seen one, I'm sure you've seen
They're all great.
There are troops, whether Ukrainian, I've seen mainly Russian, that just give up, throw down.
Yeah, all these drone footages are great and terrifying at the same time. Because from people who have actually been on these battlefields, apparently you can only hear these drones and the propellers spinning when they're about 50 feet away. And after you hear them, you have about a half second to grab your gun and aim it at said drone and fire away. Otherwise, it is going to be too close and you will die.
On their rifle and start praying. And they're still engaged. How? Is that not a war crime? They're no longer a threat, says so many people. One of the things that make up why it's a war crime is that they're no longer a threat. Just because you are not a threat, an imminent threat to an individual directly in front of you, does not mean that you're not part of a larger organization which, especially during a wartime environment like Russia and Ukraine, would still make those enemy combatants a legitimate target.
I mean, that is the thing. During a war, that is sometimes how civilians wind up targets, is just out of confusion. All of a sudden, you may have a few people who are like, yeah, I couldn't join the army, but you came to my doorstep, so I'm still going to try to fight you. Or, you came to my doorstep, so I'm going to shut my door, lock it, pretend nobody's here, and just pray you don't blow my building up. Because both options are valid, honestly. If a civilian picks up arms and shows that they can be a threat, take them out. You kind of opened the door up for that when you picked up the weapon. However, there are people who it's like, yeah, hitting any level of civilian, that's a war crime. You can't do that. They're civilians. They didn't even plan to fight. Like, okay, that one picked up a gun. He planned to fight.
Just because a weapon's over there, or I'm not near a person near the weapon, that's a threat, does not mean you're not allowed to engage them.
Yeah. Otherwise, every single drone strike from America is a war crime, because technically every strike that was made was not a current in that moment threat. And just because the threat isn't in that moment doesn't mean the threat isn't present.
Once again, let's think of aircraft. Let's think of drones. Does anybody remember the two Russian soldiers that were like in a bombed out building and one of them's getting a from the other one and the one drone just comes over and,
Woo!
Grenade? A war crime? Maybe a sex crime. Recap those two things. Not a war crime when a helicopter engages combatants 2 times or 3 times, wounded or not, still enemy combatants, and the non-threatening troops that aren't around anybody and pose no legitimate threat to anyone at the moment, but are still enemy combatants. Another train of thought that comes out about this being a war crime is that they're wounded. They jumped or fell or were blown off of the ship from the first strike, and they're wounded. So therefore, you cannot engage someone that's wounded. I don't know who you talk to, but to quote Nicholas, the fat electrician, Suddenly everyone on X is a law of warfare expert, and the new consensus is, if you get injured in any way, it's basically like grabbing a superstar in Mario. You're now invincible, and it's a war crime to stop you. Even in the United States,
For
being
real.
wounded does not mean that you're not a threat, or that somebody can't shoot you, and I'll give you an example, don't lose your minds. If somebody comes after me in my home, it's a burglary, and I shoot them with my pistol, bang, once, and they get up, they could still be a threat, especially if I'm saying stay on the ground, and they decide to get back up, I can shoot them again. They're already wounded, yes.
Well, actually, he can't shoot him because he's in New York, and he's forced by his state to retreat as much as he can, to try his hardest to get away without harming the individual who's breaking in and stealing his shit. New York, you're fucking cooked.
But just because somebody's wounded doesn't mean a threat stops. In fact, a lot of times troops overseas, including myself, were taught that during searches of people that could be dead or prisoners, be careful because they could have a suicide vest on, which they could clack off and then, well, you're going with them. How many...
Exactly. And also, you get to the point of, if you've ever seen the movie Hacksaw Ridge, there's a moment closer to the end of the movie where main character Desmond Doss, he is a combat... If you haven't seen the movie, here's the quick basis of the scene I'll describe. If you want to see it, skip like a minute and a half ahead in the video, and you'll keep spoiler free, although it's an older film at this time, so yeah. But yeah, Desmond Doss, he's a conscientious objector. He joins the military to be a combat medic because while everyone else is out there saving or taking lives, he wants to be out there saving it as much as he can. And it's one of my favorite scenes where he grabs a rifle, he wraps it around a coat, and has one of his other buddies like kind of lay on it backward because there's Japanese people coming at him, and he basically uses the rifle to hold the jacket or blanket or whatever he's using to drag him on across it to where the guy can sit and be able to shoot still while he's being dragged away. And that's probably the best example of this here, to where both guys are kind of wounded. Desmond Doss not so much. He's just been blown around, and he's been, up at that point for a long enough time to just rescuing people at person after person after person. A kind of crazy story if you haven't seen it. It's one of my favorite war movies. And apparently the real story is even crazier. They just had to dumb it down for the film because no one would believe it. Those are my favorite stories, is when it's like, oh yeah, we had to dumb this down because you probably wouldn't believe the true one. But yeah, that's my greatest example of, yeah, this person was wounded, could still pick up a weapon with a little assistance from his buddy to help get him out of the combat zone. And then once they get back to base, they heal up in the med tent, guess what? That guy will be healed up, and he might come back out on the battlefield, and he might be pissed off, ready for revenge. And now you don't have just a dead combatant. You have a live combatant who's pissed off, and you've already hurt him once.
Medal of Honor recipients do we have that were shot and then continued the fight? Maybe the only reason that all of those Medal of Honor recipients lived was because they were wounded, and the other military personnel,
yeah, that's
were like,
gotta be it.
You can't shoot him, he's wounded, even though he's killing all of us. Oh God, these
that's
dang
gotta be
laws
it.
of international war. Wounded can mean something, but not if you're still a threat or still engaging in the activity that caused you to be a target and then had that lethal force or strike confirmed, allowed, whatever, signed off on. And if you're wondering if there's any sort of technique, or procedure, TTPs, that would go along with that, yes. Look at this. Battle Drill 1, react to a near ambush. Squad size element, reacts to contact. Well, Team A is suppressing them. Team B comes up alongside of them, being perpendicular to Team A. They shift and lift fire. Team B goes, walks through that danger area and murks everybody. Why? Even if they're wounded? Because they could still be a threat. Now, sure, could you have detainee ops done in there and collect somebody? Yes. But if I just got fired at, I'm going to clear out the area to make sure I don't get shot at again, which means I'm going to kill everybody in this area.
I mean, literally, to the people here who are like, oh, but they didn't pose a threat. Technically, every single time artillery is fired, the people firing the artillery have no threat against them. They are like a mile away from the front lines or more, and they have no danger posed to themselves. Yes, their buddies up at the front lines have some danger against the enemy combatant on the front line, but in that case, yeah, you're going to fire off some artillery to kill the enemy combatants to make sure your buddies aren't going to die. Simple. It is a simple strike first or be killed second.
And then, just to double check that, Team A, whoop, goes right through. That's right, first, second, just to make sure everybody's dead. So, yes, we are taught that it doesn't matter if it's just one volley of fire and team going through an area, even a second one, a second strike you could say, can go through and wipe out enemy combatants, wounded or not. Are they a threat? Pow! Not anymore. Now, I will give it to the internet. It is a very interesting place where a lot of interesting people can look at a problem and try to solve it, or look at somebody's opinion and break it down in a multitude of ways. Which happened to me. Someone on my Twitter responded with my aircraft scenario and said, you know that there's a difference between the laws of armed conflict, LOAC, on ground, and when it comes to water or maritime.
No, there isn't.
LOAC. And you know what? He's absolutely right. Unfortunately,
kind of,
the
but
laws,
not
LOAC,
in this way.
Laws of armed conflict in the water are a little more brutal. Because, and I quote, maritime LOAC, law of armed conflict, states enemy merchant vehicles are liable to attack. So,
wow!
boom to that merchant vessel. Oh, what was that? Well, they're a terrorist group, they deserve this. Well, they do that, blah, 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 blah. Well, this is a part of a thing. Is it a merchant vehicle? That's right. You're shipping stuff.
Yes.
You're a merchant, selling things. And you're labeled a terrorist network. And you're in international waters headed towards our shores in a merchant vessel. Moving those.
And you're not going to stop at the port to pay the tariff on the products you're bringing into our nation. So in that case, you're skirting and breaking trade laws or trade agreements too.
Legal goods from your.
That's the least of our concerns.
Kazoom! You're toast. Even the international laws are on our side. Take that, Europe.
New information provides a clearer picture of the moments after this U.S. airstrike on a suspected drug smuggling boat off Venezuela in September. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and the Pentagon have faced bipartisan criticism for launching a follow-up missile strike, which reportedly killed 2 survivors of the initial attack. International law prohibits killing enemy combatants who no longer pose a threat.
This rises to the level of a war crime if it's true.
Once again, you gotta be specific with that pose a threat. Helicopters in Iraq and Afghanistan. Explosive drones in Ukraine and Russia. Nobody cares about that. Why? Because the entities did pose a threat, although it wasn't at that moment, because they were part of a designated group whose actions justified a strike of lethal force.
Yeah, if people want to call this strike a war crime, then you also got to call the 563 drone strikes Obama did war crimes. Because, oh no, my bad. That was just, that is a low number. There was over 4,000 drone strikes. There were 4,000 people killed in the 1,800 drone strikes. My bad, my numbers were a little off up here. It's down here. Yay. Yeah. Around 1,878 total drone strikes, meaning, did Obama commit 1,878 war crimes and get away with it? What? Is it only a problem when Trump does it? Because I'm starting to think it's only a problem when Trump does it.
And I'll even go further in defining threat. If you're doing an action where lethal force is justified, and then, let's say an explosion happens, you go back to doing said action, the justification is still present for a lethal strike. I was stabbing a baby, then he shot me. So I stopped, and then I stabbed the baby again. Lethal force. I'm driving a drug ship as a part of a terrorist organization. We got struck. I fell off the boat.
I fell off the boat. I got back on the boat.
My drugs and just continued doing what I was doing. I get struck again. Lethal.
I'm dead that time.
Justifiable action.
When people want to surrender, you don't kill them.
Nobody surrendered. Who surrendered? Who are they surrendering to?
I didn't see no damn white flag.
Did they put their hands up and yell, "I caramba, I surrender"? No, they went back to the actions that they were doing which caused them to get struck in the first place. They didn't have the chance to surrender. That's called combat. Sometimes you kill the guy. Sometimes when you shoot somebody, it doesn't give them an opportunity to surrender. Rand Paul. Now, I like Rand Paul. I don't agree with him on everything, and this is one of the things that we disagree with. Like this.
If they're armed, show us that they're armed. If they're not armed, explain to us why we kill people who are not armed.
Well,
They
I
were
can
up,
give you an
buddy.
easy explanation as to when and why we would do that. Soleimani, the Iranian
Doesn't matter,
general
he's
that
dead.
we murked in Iraq with, what was that? Oh yeah, a missile strike. Even though he wasn't armed specifically, along with the numerous other people that we've drone struck in the past, was he a part of an organization that was committed to doing harm to American citizens and America as a country? Yes. Let me
Yeah, the other one is when SEAL Team 6 went and raided Osama bin Laden, Osama wasn't holding a weapon when they shot him in the head. When they murked him and knocked him off the scoreboard, yeah, he was unarmed. Guess what? It's justified.
boil this down even more.
'Cause it's a
Was
war.
Grande
It's
Aragua
combat.
part of an organization intent on doing harm to Americans and on American soil?
Yes.
Yes. Did Soleimani do something in the past? Yes. Did Aragua do it? Yes. Was he going to continue? Yes. Is Aragua going to continue? Yes. If you can explain to me how Merkin or Soleimani, whatever his
Doesn't matter,
name
he's
is,
dead.
is not the exact same thing as taking out individuals in Tren de Aragua, then there's no way you can tell me that strike on the boat wasn't lawful. And if you say, well, no, actually both of them were unlawful, I'd be like, well, then we just disagree. Also,
Yep.
you could even make the argument that the individuals on the boat are a part of the target, but the main target is the boat to stop drugs from coming into the United States.
Guess they shouldn't have been on the
That
boat.
the first strike was to sink the boat, but it just set it on fire, and they wanted to make sure that they did a good job and sink that boat to the bottom of the ocean. Well, just so happens that these guys went right back onto the target and then got struck because they were striking the boat to sink it, and that's that. Now, I'm not saying that that happened or that's going to be an argument, but if we're trying to blow up a boat that's got drugs on it, you get off of it, and then you decide, I'm going to get back on that thing they just tried to explode. That's kind of your own fault,
Natural selection is taking its course there, guys.
not a war crime. Oh, look, I'm sitting on a military target. Boom. Oh, shit, they just blew it up. It's still kind of around. I better go back to it and check it out. Boom. That death is my own fault. So
Yeah,
here we are.
100%.
People thinking that that was a war crime and are very upset. And people like me who compare it to things that are happening all around us, which nobody gives a shit about.
No, it's called people who are calling it a war crime compared to the people who have a brain and a functioning frontal lobe.
And that we've done in the past, showing that, yeah, it's totally
It's
legal.
not a war
not
crime.
war
It's fine.
I think we're gonna be okay. Best way to support
Oh, well.
is get yourself a shirt. Jump out, boys, in black and white. Ooh, jumping out of a police car in civilian attire and a vest, chasing down dope boys. Cheapest way to support the channel is tell me what you think. Is it a war crime? Am I wrong? Give me another example of how I could be wrong or how I might have misstated some facts. Ooh.
I don't think
Or tell
anything
me
was
how
misstated.
I'm right in some way
I
that
think
didn't
it's 100% right.
I do enjoy reading the comments. I'm gonna go on Pepperbox and talk about how I got in a tweet battle with a trans supply officer about combat and whether or not this was a war crime. Okay.
Whew, that sounds interesting. You know, day by day ticks further and further along where I get tempted to sign up for their Pepperbox subscription service. It wouldn't be the first time I've signed up for a YouTuber's subscription platform. It would actually be the, I think, third time. But anyways, that was fantastic to watch. Very informative as always from the angry cop himself. And if you enjoyed it, don't forget to smash that like button and get subscribed. And I will see you in the next one.